Hello, hello, and thank you for listening to the Oh My God, I'm Launching podcast. I'm your host, Ken Westgar, and today I have Alisa with me. Alisa Connor, welcome.
Hey, Ken. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's an honor to have you. Today we're going to talk a little bit about email marketing because that's kind of your thing, but you also do a lot of copywriting from what I gathered, and so we're probably going to, get into some twists and turns around all of that stuff. But I would love for you to just get started with telling us, who you are, who you help, and how you help people.
Great. I'm Alisa Connor. I own a company called Alisa Connor Consulting, and I help entrepreneurs empower themselves with email marketing so that they can increase sales in the inbox without having to um, add more time and effort into their marketing.
Plain and simple.
So that's what I do. And what I have found is that most businesses will chase after the 3% of buyers, 3% or less of buyers who are ready to buy right now. And
Hmm.
you've got this huge proportion of people, 97% or more, that either aren't ready to buy, they don't know that they need your product or service, or they're just starting out their search and haven't gotten far enough into like researching what they need. That if we can stay in front of those people and stay consistent with our email marketing and make it interesting and of value, we have a higher percentage of being able to convert them into whatever it is that we're trying to sell to them.
Mm. Well, we'll definitely dive into this, and but I would love to hear a little bit about your journey, kind of from where you started out to where you're at now, and how that happened.
Okay, well, my journey is long and bumpy. It's a long and bumpy road.
Let's keep it short. Okay.
So I started my career after graduating from college working for a startup in marketing, and it was in the tech world, and we quickly got purchased by General Electric. And that pretty much flushed right down the toilet anything that I liked about the company that I worked for because it was all red tape and
Right.
lots of corporate blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And at that point, I really felt like I was a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. So I left corporate. While I was there, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to go to culinary school. So when I left, I was actually a personal chef. And I did that for quite a while. I had another food business in between there. And then I also had 3 kids in 3 years. So the arrival of my twins kind of put a damper on being able to do a lot with my own business. But I still kept up my skills, and I started my company originally under the name Ripple Effect Marketing, and I was focused on social media and using social media for small business back in about 2009. So that was a relatively new concept to people. It's
Yeah.
nothing like it is now. And I was one of the first people in Colorado to get certified in social media marketing. And so that's where my business started. And then it quickly came to the realization that yes, social media is great, but if you are trying to build a business there, you can get yourself into a world of trouble
Hmm.
because you don't own that real estate. And so that led me to the world of web design and creating websites and partnering with people that did apps, and then building out sales funnels and eventually to email marketing and all of the pieces that go into a sales funnel, lead generation, and all of those
Hmm.
components. So that's what I help people with now. I work specifically with coaches, consultants, and what I love to refer to as second act entrepreneurs. They
Okay.
are the people that have had a full on career. They have the skills, they have the expertise, they have the knowledge, but they just don't know how to turn it into a paying gig that gets
Hmm.
them out of corporate.
All right. So email marketing, I don't know how you feel about that, but when we're going into launch, and obviously there's a whole lot of different ways you can do a launch. You can do a webinar challenge, whatever. But it feels like email marketing is always coming along for that ride. I mean, you can't. I'm not going to say that you can't do email marketing, but usually you tend to do that no matter what.
Right. And so it's so funny because people get really pumped up for their launch, and they usually do a really good job of email marketing when they're launching a product. But
Yeah.
where most people drop the ball is after the launch.
Hmm.
And as I alluded to, like when you're going through a launch, you're only going to have a certain percentage of people that are going to convert. But what about the rest of those people? And so if
Mm.
you just drop the ball and then you're just emailing when you're ready to launch, guess who's mad? All the people on your list, they're like, oh, the only time I hear from Ken is when he's selling something.
Exactly.
And more often than not, that's what happens.
Mm.
Where what I have found with both clients and with myself is that the power really stays in your court if you stay in front of those people, and you can actually have a bigger launch the next time you go around if you stay in contact with those people and kind of um, massage the relationship a little bit. And
Yeah.
also, it gives you such immense opportunity to get to know your ideal clients better, get to know what they want. And a lot of times when I work with coaches and consultants, is they have this grand idea of what they want to create, and then they go to launch it and it's crickets. There's nobody there because they have no proven concept. Nobody wants what they have to sell. And there is nothing more frustrating than putting all this time, energy, and money into creating something that nobody buys. But your email marketing gives you the opportunity to go in and say, hey, what do you think about this? Hit reply. And I still reply to my email list every time that I get a response back.
Hmm. In terms of, you have kind of like before launch, you have the launch, and then you have after the launch. So before launch, I do think that a lot of people tend to think that, oh, I have to send out weekly emails. Oh my God, what's that gonna look like? Do I have to like come up with new stuff every single week? And so, how would you just even start thinking about nurturing that email list?
So there's a couple of things that I teach people and in my online program on how to tackle that.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is you can repurpose a lot of the things you're already doing. So, for example, you and I are recording this podcast. And if I'm correct, you're not in the middle of a launch. So, you could easily take this podcast information and say, hey, I have a really great resource for you on email marketing this week. I did this interview. And that is something that you would put out to your audience.
Hmm.
But that question is very relative because it's something I get all the time. And I refer to it as blank screen syndrome, where you just go and you sit down at your screen and there's nothing there and you don't know what to say. And so
Right.
I want to empower people to assassinate that. So I actually put together a resource that gives you 365 email prompts that are just questions you
Mm.
can answer that get your brain going, get you creative. And so even if you don't want to send an email every single day, there's like prompts that'll probably last you the rest of your natural born life
Yeah.
so that you can create those. And then one of the things that I often work with clients on is sometimes we just get really busy in our business, and we have, especially if you're preparing for a launch or you're trying to, stay up on different things, doing podcast interviews, that sort of thing, is that if you can pound out those emails all in one swoop for the month,
Hmm.
that really will help you. And once you're on a roll, sometimes it's easy to just keep writing and just get them all done. And usually you can get your 4 emails, like if you send one a week, done in less than an hour. And it just sometimes it's the overwhelm of like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to put in there. I don't, it's just too much
Yeah.
that oftentimes we stymie ourselves and keep ourselves from something that really isn't as hard as we make it.
Yeah. And I just in terms of coming up with ideas, that's one thing. But if you I tend to like to think that if you start out with like, this is a topic that I want to talk about, and you just kind of pull those up, and then you can start, okay, this is a topic, what are some main key points that I want to make sure that I get in there. So you come up with maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 bullet points underneath each topic, then you can start flushing out the rest of the, or fill in the blanks kind of a thing. I don't know. How do you feel about that concept? I know that I've used it and I've really benefited a lot from that, just to kind of get started.
Yeah, I think that's a really, and usually in your business, you're going to have 3 to 5 talking points that you normally talk about. And one of the things I heard recently was that we think we talk about things too much as entrepreneurs
Yeah.
because it's constantly on our mind.
Hmm.
But in reality, our customers, if they're not repeating back to us what we say all the time, we're not saying it enough. And so just focusing on those 3 key areas is really great. But where I find people really struggle with their email is they try to make it really formal.
Hmm.
And what people really want is like a letter that you would write to your mom,
Hmm.
or they want it to be conversational. They want it to be interesting. And those are the successes that I'm seeing with my clients and with people that I work with and with my own email even, is that when I have the conversation and I'm talking to them like they're a person versus really worrying about hitting those 5 key points, the emails resonate so much more and the conversation starts to come back and forth, which is really the power of any marketing that you do, whether that's on social media or in your inbox or on a stage, wherever it may be that you're trying to put yourself out there, is when you can have the conversation and you get people talking back, you know you're hitting a hot button. And
Hmm.
so, yes, definitely, have those key areas that you can focus on. But more importantly, think about it from the perspective of the person that you want to help and what are they saying to themselves and how can you start a conversation that they'll go, oh, wow, that Ken knows what's happening up here. How does he know that? I'm going to pay attention now. And then
Hmm.
one last thing is that one of the analogies I quite often use with people is that as entrepreneurs, we try to jam pack everything we know into one marketing mechanism. And your brain physically cannot respond to all of these different details. It's impossible. And so it's kind of like multitasking. Multitasking is a fallacy. People cannot do it. Your brain can only focus on one thing. And so I use the analogy that if you go to the grocery store and there's no plastic bags there, they only have paper bags, the old brown paper bags, and there's no carts because everybody else has them, and the person checking you out is filling up your grocery bag and you've got one bag, you can probably manage that, get to the car, open the car, not a problem.
Hmm.
But if they give you two, well then, you can probably do it, but you're getting a little off balance. You're like, how am I going to open the car door? And even with the automated, well, if they hand you three, forget about it. Something's going to
Hmm.
fall. You're going to have a bag ripped in the parking lot. Your day is going to go downhill. And the same is true when we approach potential clients, is that if we give them one idea, the opportunity that they're going to respond and that they're going to resonate with that is so much higher than if we hand them one, two, three, four, five ideas, concepts, steps, whatever it is, that you're going to see bigger success. And then one of the other things that I see in the inbox is that because people think they have to have all these steps, that they have to have these really long emails. Well,
Hmm.
most people don't read it. They don't have time. It's not because they're not that interested. It's because they're busy, they're distracted, the kids just spilled stuff all over the floor, whatever it might be. And so, straight to the point and creating a conversation is going to get you better engagement and also make it so that when your inbox shows up, they're like, hey, wait, there's Ken. I know he's got something cool to say. I'm going to open that
Hmm. Yeah, and I would say what I've noticed personally is there's maybe just a handful of people that come into my inbox that I actually really sit down and read through the entire email. And it doesn't matter how long it is because the content that they are delivering is good and they have a tone that's, laid back, fun. It's not as formal as you said, So I think it really is important in terms of how you are writing that email and what kind of tone you're setting with that email because it doesn't have to be that formal. It can be a little bit fun. You can share a little bit about yourself, just be yourself kind of a
one.
thing.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And that's how you'll attract the people that are meant to be yours.
Mm,
And I think it's interesting that you said, there's probably only a few of people that you read
yeah.
their emails. And I don't think that's unusual. I think that's the norm.
Hmm.
But the key is becoming one of those people. And I
Yeah.
would bet those people that you look forward to have earned the right to your eyeballs
Hmm.
in one way or another, whether it was they provided value or they have interesting content or it's something that's relative to what's going on in your life right now.
Hmm.
And that's really the goal of what I try to help people with when it
Yeah.
comes to email.
Now, obviously, one of the hardest thing is to get people to just open the email, obviously, and the subject line is like the alpha omega of getting people to open that email. What
Absolutely.
kind of tips or tricks do you have for making people open those emails?
So it's so funny. I actually have an entire talk that I do about creating scroll stopping headlines
I don't doubt
because
it.
it's it is it's but it's so funny, the things that you wouldn't think of that seem so ironic really do work.
Mm,
And one is just asking a question, a non like a open-ended question. And I a lot of times people will ask me when it comes to writing your headlines, like, should I write it first? Should I write it second? And I, my answer is always, it depends. Like, usually I'll write a headline and then I'll create the content. And I'm like, okay, well, that headline doesn't work anymore.
mm,
But I think a lot of people will also just write one headline and leave it at that. Whereas if you write multiple headlines, I actually recommend writing 30
oh,
because it gets your brain and your creativity going. And you will get more creative the more you write because your brain works that way. Like if you give it some freedom, it'll get more creative. And people are like, oh, 30 headlines, that's such a waste of time. But it's not, because you may have 5, 6, 7 headlines in those 30 that you can use over time. And then you can just stick them in an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet, whatever you use. And you've got one for later. And sometimes those headlines that you create will even create a diving board or a jumping board for your future email content. So one is to create those open-ended questions, and sometimes people really struggle with that. So, um, if you can answer the question yourself with a yes or no, then you need to work on it a little bit more. But if you were on my email list, you would get random emails that I like last week. I think my headline was, "Are you having another manic Monday?" And it was like a lot of times I use song lyrics, but it really,
mm-hmm.
if you can showcase your personality and then people get to know you,
Yeah,
they're more likely to open your email. So, one is to start with those questions. Two, if you pulled up your phone right now and you looked at your email inbox, chances are you would just see a lot of black and white. There'd be a lot of black and white headlines.
mm-hmm.
And so, one of the things you can quickly and easily do is add emojis,
Gotcha.
specifically not yellow, like red, and just like get creative with your emojis because it makes it stand out right there and it will catch that person's eye.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, you know, I wouldn't go overboard because Google and the other spam people don't like that. And the same would go for like using different symbols and stuff. Like they really don't like that. And that really is a struggle. Like that's one of the other big things I hear is like, how do I get out of the spam box? How do I stay out of the
Yeah.
spam box? And my first recommendation is be consistent with your email and train your subscribers to expect email from you. And two, like don't do scummy, slimy things.
Mm-hmm. Although they can, I mean, the inbox can find the strangest things put in the spam folder. I mean, I had it was a rather important email, and I ended up finding it in the spam folder. And okay, I put it back into the inbox, replied to the email, and what do you know? Even the next email got put in the spam folder. It's like, come on, I replied to the same person. It's like,
Yeah.
why is this happening? So it's not always easy to, make sure that you don't end up in there, but obviously do what you can for
Right.
not
And
ending up there.
the irony is that um, I recently had a client who needed to have somebody have access to her Google Analytics, and Google sent the email to this lady, and guess where it ended up? In the spam filter. So Google's like filtering its own emails into spam.
Wow.
So it's just sort of funny, but you do the best you can,
Yeah.
and everybody's inundated. And unfortunately, the not so great marketers have ruined a lot of the reputation stuff for the people that really are trying to do good things.
Yeah.
And so you're always trying to kind of get around that, but really training your subscribers from the get go to add you as a contact, making it really easy for them to find your emails, making it easy for them to confirm their subscription, those kinds of things do a lot to keep you out of there.
Hmm.
But then once you're in the inbox, yeah, I mean, being yourself, being creative, thinking outside the box, like a lot of times when I'm looking at advertisements, I don't watch a ton of TV, but maybe I would hear an ad on a podcast or I see a billboard or, I'm out and about and I just happen to see something. I think I kind of have a little photo file that I'll take pictures. If it's super creative, because you can
Hmm.
always repurpose, don't steal, repurpose somebody
Hmm.
else's creativity in your own marketing and put it into into an email. And there are huge corporations out there that spend thousands and thousands of dollars to hire the best copywriters on the planet. And even they get it wrong sometimes, but usually they have pretty good ideas that you can just make your own and really step up your writing ability if you struggle with that, if it's not something you're not naturally creative or you're not naturally able to come up with your own stuff. Just borrow some ideas and try them on and
Hmm.
test.
Yeah. In terms of welcoming people to your email list, there's welcome sequence is a thing. Obviously, how do you feel about that, and how do you approach that?
So because I'm certified by Donald Miller and StoryBrand, I have a particular way that I create that welcome series.
Hmm.
And I think what I find most often is that when you get a welcome series, it's immediately all about you and your business. And most people are not interested in you or your business. They're interested in solving a problem. And so if you can direct that welcome series with first the delivery of whatever you promise them, whatever the lead
Hmm.
generation is, and then really kind of dive into a way that that resource helps them address just even a tiny piece of that problem, you're going to have them hooked a little bit more. So then when your next email comes, if you continue to talk about not only that problem, but how you've helped other people solve that problem, they're going to keep coming back again because you're just giving them more ammunition to realize that there is a solution for the problem that they're having and that quite possibly you could be the person to help them solve it. More often than not, what welcome sequences do is, hey, here's the free stuff, here, buy my stuff. There's
Hmm.
there's nothing in between. And we live in this world where we have a lot of instant gratification solutions. And what's lost in the translation is the building of relationships and the building of trust. And everybody knows, or they have heard, if they don't know, is that it takes know, like, and trust for people to purchase from you. And the more ex- of an investment that you are asking them to make in your product or service, whatever that is, the higher level of trust that is required. So if you have somebody sign up for a lead magnet and then you're trying to push them into a $5,000 product in 2 emails, that's not going to work. And in fact, you're probably going to make them mad and they're going to unsubscribe. So in that welcome email series, I'm not saying don't sell. I'm just saying give the relationship time to develop, earn the trust, earn the right to be in their inbox. And more importantly, rather than trying to push them to a sales page, push them to a conversation
Hmm.
and what that looks like for the next step in your business. And of course that's all going to depend on what your business model is and where you are in your business. You know, there are people that we both know that have multi-million dollar businesses and they're probably not going to have the emails that say, hey, schedule a call with me, because they don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
But chances are they still wouldn't send that kind of email sequence in the first welcome series. Like if we were to go back and read a welcome series, it's probably
Hmm.
directing them to another resource or another way to learn more. And then that will move people through the cycle.
Yeah. It's a lot about just providing value. Those
Mm-hmm.
first kind of emails, obviously.
Yes.
So moving away from welcome sequence, nurture sequence, we've gone through all that. Now we're kind of approaching to we're getting to launch. So what does that look like? Because obviously that could be a whole bunch of emails, and it can be not so much, depending on the person who is behind the wheel.
Right. And it also depends on the product. I
Obviously,
think if you're selling a $27 product, you don't need to have an email series that's 30 emails
yeah.
long. And I get one of the questions I often get, especially in the launch period, is I don't want to send too many emails.
Exactly.
And I think what's really funny is that we as business owners, we have this little facade that everyone's looking for every one of our emails and they're going to read every single one of our emails. And I don't know about you, but I woke up this morning and my email inbox since last night had like 97 new emails.
Okay,
And
I'm not
most of the
that stuffy, but
most
I get the point.
yeah, most of the time you're just like that's so overwhelming. Most of
Hmm.
these are going into the garbage. And so I think there is a fine balance of too many emails and not enough emails. But one
Hmm.
of the things that you can do that is really successful in those launch emails is to give people the opportunity to opt out of the launch
Yes.
sequence at the very
Hmm.
beginning. And I don't think enough people do this.
Oh no,
Um,
not even the biggest names do this.
no. And if you give people that opportunity to just simply say, hey, you can receive all of my emails. If you're not interested in blah, 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 blah launch emails, basically,
Hmm.
click this link. And then just immediately unsubscribing them from that sequence is going to save you a lot of headache.
Yeah.
Most email service providers give you that option. If you don't know how to do that, I don't know if that's something you do. That's definitely something I can help with.
Oh yeah.
But that would be the first thing. And then the
Hmm.
next thing is if you have the capability because you have tagged your subscribers and you know their interest area and where they are on their buying journey, is to create emails that talk to them and where they are.
Hmm.
And I think, yes, I know that's more work up front, but it also will have a higher conversion level because you're meeting people where they are, not expecting them to be where you are. And there are people that do this really, really well in the coaching and consulting and online course space, and there are people that don't. And when you take the time and if you're brand new to business, you may not have those tags set up yet, but please do it right away. Because when you can create those emails and they are specifically in the person's head, because you have understood where they are and where they're coming from and how you can help them, you're going to have them not only read and open more emails because they're going to be like, what does Ken have to say today? Oh my gosh, yesterday's was a killer.
Hmm.
But they're going to go on that journey and go, okay, he is saying all the right things. He's pushing all the right buttons and he's telling me all the right things. I can't imagine how great what he's got his, what's in his course is going to be if this is what it's been to lead up to it. Um, so there's a fine balance. Like you don't want to overkill your emails, but I think just the other thing that stops entrepreneurs is that they don't send enough emails.
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to send too many emails, you're probably not sending too many emails anyway, so you're good
Right.
to go.
Yeah. And not giving people enough information or warm up prior to purchase.
Hmm.
Because I think what I've seen also is like with newer meaning, 0 to 5 years, especially in that online course business, if they're not, they'll go from like one or two emails and then that's it. They're like, oh, nobody bought. That sucked. And
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, probably nobody read like the first email. And then by the second email, you're asking them to buy. And so it is a fine balance. And I don't have a magic number. I would
Yeah.
say you need to test your audience. You need to see what things are going to work. And then if you have, the ability to do A/B testing on not only your email content, but your email headlines, that's going to get you further faster. But yeah, I agree. Like you probably need no less than 5 to 7 emails for your launch. Um, and then, depending on how well you know your audience, how vetted they are before they get there, and how vetted your product is, could extend that even further.
Hmm. And also, I think, well, a lot of people are super scared of people unsubscribing. It's like, oh no, they unsubscribe. What is wrong with my content or my emails? But at the same time, it's kind of like a good riddance because they probably would not have bought from you anyway since they are unsubscribing. Because if they really were, they'd probably stick around and just, regularly check your email.
Yeah. I celebrate unsubscribes because I do
Yeah.
because it's making room for the right people to show up.
Hmm.
And I think people do. They get afraid. They're like, oh, they I lost 5 people this week. You're correct. Like those 5 people probably wouldn't have bought from you anyway. But I also think there's a lot of fear around vanity numbers.
Hmm.
that, you have to have 5,000 or 10,000 people on your list in order to make really good money. And that's not the case. Like, you could have 1 to 300 people on your list and be making 7 figures easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, alleviating that fear, it's kind of like on social media, like everybody thinks you need to have thousands and thousands of
Hmm.
followers. But if you have a couple, 7, 8, 900 followers and they're actually engaged with what you do and they're talking back to you, imagine that in a room.
Hmm.
Imagine
Yeah.
being in a room with 900 people.
My house would be jam packed. I mean, I can fit that many
I
people in
mean,
there.
if you really step back and think about it that way, it's a little bit scary. You're like, oh, there's 900 people in here
Hmm.
listening to me. That's where we need to be in our
Yeah.
mentality. And I think a lot of times we look at the Jasmine Stars and the Amy Porterfields and the James Wedmores, and we think they have hundreds of thousands of followers and hundreds of thousands of people on their email list. Well, one, they've been doing this a long darn time.
Yep.
And number two, if you were to ask them, if you sat down in a room with them and said, "Hey, did it start out that way?" They would laugh you out the
Yeah.
door, because nobody starts there. It
No.
all happens over time. And I'm sure you run into that with people when you're working with them on the launch series, is they just think they're going to immediately launch and have a $10 million launch, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, pumpkin, let's have
No.
a heart to heart, cuz
There's a
that's
reality check.
yeah."
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's more common in terms of launches to have uh, zero sales launches, or failed launches in that sense, than having that six-figure launch.
Yeah.
I mean, that rarely. I mean, there's always an exception, but rarely happens when you're launching for the first, second time. You have to still build out that launch and build that, prepare your audience for the launch and all of that stuff. So there's kind of all this kind of stuff that goes into it, and the same is with the email as well. It's not
Yeah.
no different.
Well, and I attribute it, so there's so much media out there that's like, make 6 figures in 6 days, and it's
Yep.
just so ludicrous. And I think about like the simple things we learned growing up, like riding a bike.
Mm.
Did you hop on your first bicycle and ride a 10K race in the first
That
week?
that would be weird.
Absolutely not. Like, you were lucky to go 4 houses down and come back.
Yeah.
Yet we think that that's how businesses are built, and that's how email lists are built, and that's how life goes forward. But I had to laugh. I had somebody come to me the other day, and they're like, "Oh, I've been doing this for 18 months and I'm still not a millionaire." And I was like,
What?
"Girl, 18 months is nothing. Drop
Come
in the
back in
bucket."
10 years, then we'll talk.
And I just, I wanted to spell that illusion, because it's
Hmm.
just not like, building a business takes time and it takes effort and it takes commitment. And I think a lot of people just want that quick fix. And that's not the reality of it. Like, anything that you really want, it does take you putting in the work, doing the time, and getting to that point. And it's easy to point fingers at these people that we see that are super successful because we are exposed to them so often.
Hmm.
But if you walk the journey of where they started from, like, they've been doing this day in and day out for year after year after year. And it's not that not everybody could get there, but you have to be willing to put in the effort and the time and the commitment that they have at the
Hmm.
level they have in order to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like, James Wedmore, that we both know, is it took him 15 years to get to multi 7 million figure business. It's not something that happened overnight. It might
Yeah,
look like it sometimes, but yeah.
exactly. And I think, you know, I love his story. He's probably one of my favorite success stories,
Hmm.
because he is so open and honest about like the trials and
100%. Yeah.
tribulations and things that he has gone through. And one of the things that he says that I think is so, there's a couple things, but one that's so powerful is like, you could be one decision away from getting to that goal.
Hmm.
And it could be just one thing that you need to do a little bit different or tweak a little bit different that will get you to that level. But focusing on like all of this exterior nonsense of vanity metrics and how many people have liked my post today and blah blah blah, that takes you away from the focus of that one specific thing that could actually move you to the next level and the next
Mhm.
level and the next level. And so, if you take anything away from this show today, it's that focus on where you want to go and put your energy there and just know that your success is inevitable, but you got to focus and take the steps to move forward and do the work.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. Let's get back into email marketing because I have a couple more questions. So when we're done the launch and you kind of wrapping up, everything is done, you still have some opportunities to either make some more revenue or to get some feedback or, just, yeah, you have still some opportunities. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And so, some of the things that I have seen done and that I have done with clients, I have not. Well, I should say I have tried. I have dabbled in that, but more often than not, I've been doing it with clients. But is to go back to people that have really engaged, because your metrics, your email metrics, are like a gold mine, and they
Mm,
will tell you all kinds of things about what was hitting, what was not hitting. You can actually go back and see the people that clicked on the majority of those emails that did not buy, and go back to those people in a couple of weeks and just say, hey, um, you were really interested in this product, this program, whatever it is that you're offering. So and so joined the program 2 weeks ago, and this is the results they're already seeing. I want to give
mhm,
you the opportunity to, we don't normally do it, like however you want to phrase it. If you normally don't open the program, don't, tell fibs, but just say we have a special time frame that we're opening it up for people that showed a lot of interest previously because we want you to succeed too, like
mhm,
Maria, for example, and putting a limiter on that for sure, because limiters create urgency and they create action. But it does offer the opportunity for you to not only open up the previous program if you want to enroll them in that, or even move them into a different service offering.
mhm,
Because a lot of times, for example, like somebody may look at a online program or a group program and they're just like, no, I don't think that's going to work for me because I need more help. But
mhm.
then we forget, oh, by the way, we have a one-on-one program that would be perfect for you.
Exactly.
And so, really knowing what your offers are and then being able to communicate that. And then, last but not least, it's a great time for feedback. Like, I love to send, and it's amazing how many people will actually fill it out, but a survey.
Mhm,
Hey, what was your experience? Why didn't you join? Or why did, what kept you from joining? However, you want to do it. And it can be super short. But people will, and if you don't want to do a survey form, you can just say hit reply. It's going to depend on, how big your business is and how much time you have to access those. I find the hit replies versus the survey buttons do get better responses because people just hit reply. It's easier.
yeah.
But if you can't manage that or your team doesn't have access to the inbox to do that for you, that could be a little bit more tricky. But it's a great opportunity to get feedback on not only the program and why people didn't buy, but also like what they liked about the launch, what they didn't like about the launch, what was missing, what you did well, all of those sorts of things. So that when you sit down with your team and hopefully debrief your launch, you can take some of those things into consideration. And then also, um, it never hurts to reach out to them and say, hey, we'll be launching this again in 3 months or whatever. Is it something that you would want us to contact you about then? Or I don't know how exactly you would want to phrase that, but because it may just be that one little lever that's going to push
Mhm,
them over the edge to purchasing.
yeah. And I would add to that sometimes people would wait maybe two, three, four, five launches until they actually feel ready to get into your program or
Yeah.
course or membership. It doesn't always happen on that first try, so keep that in mind as well as you're launching because you just want to continue doing what you did,
Yep. That's
and
an excellent point.
mhm. So
Yep.
don't give up, basically.
Yeah. And
But that
and
but that's the way it is with business. Regardless, don't give up.
yeah.
Because that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that people don't see the results, and no, then it's like, yeah, well, this is not working, so screw it.
I'm going to do something else.
Yeah,
That's what most entrepreneurs do.
yeah,
That didn't work. I'm going to do something else versus like, let's just try it again. Let's
hmm
do it better this time.
yeah. Have something to compare the data with.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mm.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you feel like we didn't get a chance to go through in terms of email marketing or anything else that you want to mention?
No, I really want to encourage people to utilize email marketing as a way to not only promote what they're doing, but to just really start conversations.
Hmm.
Anytime that you can create a conversation and have back and forth dialogue, you are immediately building trust, especially if you are the person that responds to those emails versus a team member. And I know that's not possible in everybody's business, but the more time you can make for that, the higher the likelihood that that person will buy from you in the future.
Hmm.
And so email marketing is a great opportunity for you to build relationships. I'm a fan of social media. I think it has its place, but with all of the changes and modifications happening in that world, and they will continue to happen, you got to have a safe playground. And to me, that's your website and email marketing. And if you can get people there and they can learn more about who you are and what you do and start to build conversation with you, you're going to have better numbers for every launch, for every new program you put out there.
Hmm.
And even for getting out into the world, like on podcasts or stages or whatever that looks like, is that's going to help build your reputation because you become consistent, you become reliable, and people know where to find you.
Yeah, and I also would mention that with the email list, you can actually download that list and take it with you to another platform if that's something. I mean, if the platform were to shut down versus social media platform shutting down, well then bye
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah.
It's gone. But
Yeah.
email list is something that you can actually pull out and take to the next platform and still
Yeah.
continue to have a business. So yeah, it's kind of important.
Yeah. Well, and one note on that is like, right, I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn. That's kind of my platform of choice. Um, and they're working really hard to make lead generation an opportunity for businesses. But what they
Hmm.
don't tell you is that they don't want you to download that information and put it
Right.
into your own email list. And so social media platforms are in the business of keeping people on their platform.
Yep.
And so the quicker you can get people off the platform and either to your website or on your email list, the better it's going to be for you. And I like social media to an extent, and then I think there's some value there, and you can meet new
Hmm.
people and be exposed, but all that. But ultimately, you need to get them over on your list so that you have the control back and not at the mercy of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of the company
Hmm.
in charge.
Yeah. 100%. If people want to reach out to you, work with you, and something like that, how can they do that?
So you can find me on my website. I have all of the links and everything is pretty much alisaconnor.com. It's Alisa, ALISACONNER.com. And I'm over on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect, just look me up over there and send me a request and I will connect with you then.
All right. And we'll link up the website and your profile to LinkedIn in the show notes. Click on. And thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your expertise about email marketing. Really appreciate that.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This has been great. It's been great getting to know you a little bit better. And I appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who was listening in this week. Take care.